Aloha, everyone. Welcome to Making Love Visible When Everything Changes. My name is Junedillinger, and I am so pleased that you are here with me today. Gosh, it's been a while since I offered a podcast vlog interview, and today I have the honor of having a very good friend and coach on board with me. His name is Bennet Marks, and I'm just going to give a tiny little intro about him. I want to share with you that I met Bennett years ago before my book the idea was just rolling around in my mind. And he spent several coaching sessions with me here in Honolulu. And it was my first deep dive into what a coaching session would look like. And what Bennett was able to offer to me at that time was professionalism, a new way to look at what I was creating, a new way to look at myself, and lo and behold, paperwork that still sits in my file today, some 10 years later. And so in this honor, I said to Bennett, look, I need to get you on board with me. I need to refresh what this looks like. Weddings were just shut down, and the International Coaching Federation sent me a letter on the same day saying, hey, we accepted your application. You can now take your exam. And so what better day than to have Bennet Marks on with me? So Bennett, welcome to Making Love Visible. I'm so glad you're here with me.
Oh, thanks, June. It's great to see you. I've missed you, and I miss Hawaii. And I remember when we met and when we started talking, and you always had that natural energy that it's a brightness about you. So it's great to be here. Thank you.
Just an honor. And so I want to keep it based around the coaching conversation, because that's the career that you are a master in. And in my tiny little bit of time, some people have said, why would you get a coaching certificate, June? You're already a licensed Unity teacher. You own a wedding business, blah, blah, blah. But I needed something to do last year. And I realized the basis of it was also involved in bubbled up through a relationship that I was involved in based on listening. What was I really hearing? And as you and I have reignited our wonderful friendship again, I feel so grateful. And working on coaching sessions with one another and supporting one another, I realized that there's something about you that holds a magic. And I believe it's your history and your knowledge, like the experience that you come from and the knowledge base and wisdom that you offer. And so I'd kind of like to keep it aligned in that perspective. So how would that work out for you?
Oh, that'd be great. You know, it's a long story how I got to where I'm at, but coaching's about being able to take challenges that have presented experience in your life and turn that into wisdom and jewels that you use in your coaching.
Mm-hmm. I know that some of the things that we have talked about have been gleaned from a rocky road, and using that perspective in coaching. And so would you just share a little bit of your history and how you came to work as a master coach, both with corporations, but also the individual person such as myself, so that our audience can get an idea of who is this guy, Bennet Marks, and why do I need him in my life?
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for that question. So the best way to understand my career is in two parts. The first part was my corporate experience. And, you know, I worked at JP Morgan Chase as an analyst. I went into tech in the 90s when it was booming, and ended up in telecom later on, you know, before I got into coaching. Mm-hmm. And so I had that typical corporate experience where I'm trying to climb the ladder. By the way, on the side, I'm doing Tony Robbins and Landmark and all these other self-help programs. And I just got to this point really in 1999 that was more about a calling, you know, and it was speaker, author, coach. And I went to a Mark Victor Hansen event, and they were talking about writing your book and move rapidly into coaching. So I finished my book, Perspectives, Creating a Vision of Your Ultimate Life. And it went along with this program that I wrote called Life by Design Leadership. Now, back then, no one knew what coaching was. It was very new vocation. And so, I had to search out the coaches for me. I have a coach. And I started working at the enterprise level. So I delivered to Fleur Daniel and Xerox and Goodwill Industries and JD Edwards, a bunch of, with 100 high-end professional entrepreneurs. And it was great. Those were the days. But then September 11th happened.
Hold that
so
thought.
the training, but
Hold that thought. Then
okay.
September 11th happened. I just want to share with our audience. It's been a little bit since I've done this, so I want you to know, hang in there, because the internet wants to be unstable, and every word that we're sharing is valuable, and we'll fill in the pieces in between. So don't leave us. Okay, September 11th.
Am I freezing up, June, or?
Yeah, I am a little bit, you are a little bit, but I want our audience
to
try
to work with
us. So I just wanted to segue there. I was waiting for like a little intermission. That's a big intermission with September 11th. So please go ahead.
So after that, I kind of retooled, and I moved up to Seattle in 2004, and I jumped out of that role, which was, and then what I did is I moved into money, and I started working for Pinnacle Financial Strategies, selling a platform that focused on banks and credit unions, which was still, it was a consulting role, and I was still in a consultative role, doing what I did. And I moved on from that, taking on various types of roles in consulting and more business development than interpersonal coaching. Although I've, maintained a number of different coaching relationships over the years, my coaching divides into those two different parts. One is the interpersonal transformation, where I work with, things that block us and help to pull out that best version of ourselves, where I help businesses to either raise money or hyper accelerate their growth. And that kind of brings us up to today. I've had a number of different consulting and coaching roles over the years, which have, exhibited my skills in various ways. Does that kind of cover it?
It's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then from I want to say, perhaps the more metaphysical realm, I know one of your favorites is Joseph Campbell.
Oh, yeah.
And I would love for you to segue into that experience, because there is an inner calling that almost every time you and I speak and share with one another, there's something from Joseph Campbell that comes from your lips.
Yeah.
So if you would share on that.
Yeah. Okay. So Joseph Campbell, in my mind, was one of the brightest. He studied the ancient tribal wisdom, from the Hopis to basically every type of mystic culture that you could imagine. And he wrote this book called The Hero's Journey, which describes what happens to us in life. If you watch any major movie, from Star Wars to Lord of the Rings, you'll see that this theme is very common throughout cinema. And really what it is, it's about the hero, whether he or she is presented with a challenge in life, and leaves their home, leaves the Shire, and goes out on this adventure, to face darkness and face the challenge and face their demons. And what we love about that is that they fight and they overcome these demons, they slay their dragons, and they come back home with this pearl of wisdom that then they can use in their life, that makes sense of why we have to face all of these challenges in our life, and some people get stuck in anger and depression, and they don't understand that they need to process that and that eventually that anger and depression will turn into wisdom and make them stronger and better. And Joseph Campbell introduced that whole scenario in his hero's journey. And that's why I like to use it in my coaching, because it helps us to move away from I'm bad and I'm wrong and I'm at the effect of this situation happening in my life. And now I'm moving into I'm at cause over it. I'm healing from it. I have wisdom because I've experienced it, and compassion for others who may come into my path that I can help because I've gone through it.
I love that. I have often said we teach what we need to learn most.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Sometimes
in the ancient Egypt, the law of one. The law of one is it introduces so many amazing concepts, and I've been. It's interesting because I was introduced to it through several sources that all kind of converge. But in the law of one, teaching and learning are the same word. It's like a combined concept. And it's true, that in order to learn something, you must teach it. Or that the best learning takes it on at the level where you could teach it after you've studied.
that I say that because I love how you bring up Joseph Campbell when you and I speak and we coach with one another,
Yeah.
because it reminds me of my own beingness and what I am creating. And then I think about my book, The Benefit of the X, the subtitle, Making Love Visible When Everything Changes. And asking, what are you doing in your life to make love visible? Because everything is always changing. So how are you showing up to that? And you, as a coach, have that opportunity all day and all night long for yourself and for others.
Yeah, sometimes I would love to drill down on that a little bit. I guess sometimes for me, love is not visible, even though I'm coming from a space of love, like when I look at sometimes, I want my clients to understand the principles that are the backdrop of a great life, that the principles, if you stand for them, and I say if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, integrity, compassion, accountability, commitment, focus, compassion, love, all those principles that become the underpinnings of a great life, that it's bigger than the situation in front of you. And it is the way to overcome these seemingly insurmountable odds. And when you first break up with someone, you're devastated. I can remember certain experiences in my life where I was physically and emotionally shut down because I went through a breakup or what have you. And I couldn't function. I mean, I couldn't sleep. I started having anxiety attacks and all that stuff. And so to move through that and come out the other side healed and with wisdom, and then to share that in a loving way, wow, that's a calling. And sometimes it looks like love, like you're taking for dinner, and sometimes it looks like, hey, get over it, and here's the principle that goes underneath that, that might help or save your life. And so I think there's all sides to love, and we need to look for it. But what I love about your program, June, is that it centers people in love, in their heart space. And I think it changes the way that we come at situations. If we come from a place of love as opposed to a place from fear, it completely changes the dynamic and the outcome.
And along the lines of coaching, I've noticed when people are taking care of they're willing to look at their own activities first, their own choices, rather than placing the blame on somebody else. The benefit of coaching
Yep.
is that I'm suddenly taking responsibility for myself. I've been given permission to not feel guilty for what I've created, and the opportunity to shift my mind to change with being kind to myself, like just being kind. And
Yeah.
even Bennett, when you coached me long ago, you opened up my mind to a window of possibility that I never saw by asking me questions about what I wanted to create. So you gave me the space to put words to what I wanted to create. And that was incredibly valuable in a coaching experience. And so if people understood
having a language, so moving from being at the effect to being at cause is a distinction in leadership, like where you no longer have to be the victim and now you're the champion. And again, going back to Joseph Campbell, that's what the hero's journey is about. It's like, okay, I went through it. I felt like, I had major challenges. And I think it's very natural to become a victim. And the minute you become a victim of a situation and you hold yourself as the victim, you're stuck. And so the coaching helps us to move from resisting or pushing the responsibility for a situation out there somewhere to taking it on and making choices about what we can do. And so that was the first thing that you said. Mm-hmm. The second thing is the narrative. And, you could say, and I've studied neurolinguistics and I'm a practitioner and worked with these concepts for years and years and years. And you could say that reality is created by the language we use to describe it. If you change your language, you change your reality. And so creating a narrative that works for you is a huge part of that. And so I'm really happy to hear you say that. I'm happy if we could think through, because it's, a lot of the narrative we need to be champions and leaders of our own lives or be in a place of love, you won't find on the news. They're all rooted in fear, and angst and anger and negativity. And we're talking about living at the polar opposite end of that, and
I'm a unicorn. I'm a junicorn. I'm a unicorn on this planet. And people are like, what? Look at her. She's always happy. Well, I'm choosing. I get to choose for now, as long as I know I get to choose.
Yeah. Excellent.
So that brings me to a thought with regard to that, because I know people remark on effervescence or however they see my light. And I've worked really hard. I've worked hard to get here, and I'm by far away from any sort of perfection.
And you make it look easy.
I just want to be sure I'm feeling good while I'm doing it for the most part. But there are a lot of times where I have little mini breakdowns, and then I feel like if I don't show who I am, then what good is it for living? I think part of it is being who I am and showing up to all of me is really what it's all about.
One of those principles, we call it vulnerability, being vulnerable, right? Not being weak, which is different than vulnerability. Vulnerability is basically open. In the ancient days, they used to call it humility. And I think that we've kind of lost what humility is about, to walk humbly on your path. And if you look at the polar opposite of humility, which is arrogance, arrogance is what keeps us from learning, keeps us from being open, keeps us from moving into that next space. And so maybe the coaching is about clarifying those principles.
Yes, and being in the coaching process invites me to be a deeper, better listener, invites me to deeper connect with a client, as I'm sure you've experienced. And the other part to that is that I think, wow, am I just doing this for me? Does my client even know? Like sometimes when you're coaching me or I'm with you, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is a total win-win.
Yeah, same
And
here.
so, yeah, so life becomes really abundant. And I have so appreciated our connection. The one thing I noticed that you do in your coaching that I struggle with because I have a looking good program. Clearly, I like to look good because I do. I just
And you
do.
look fantastic.
Thank you. And I can say, oh, that was from my childhood. I grew up in a wealthy neighborhood and I just felt like I needed to show off to be seen and
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah. Because I was adopted, I wanted to be noticed, which is all
yeah,
a narrative, a part of a story that I can hold
yeah,
um, and begin to notice. And although it is active in my life when I see that I'm not authentic, because I find sometimes when I'm listening in coaching, this is what you do. What that I'm working on is asking the hard questions.
yeah,
You
yeah.
ask the questions that just land, and I just go, whoa. And then
Thank
you
you.
hear this long pause, and I'm like, do I have to answer that? I'm having this whole conversation with myself. But then I realize I'm with you for a reason. And the reason is to grow. And I'm using my time. So if I'm using my time, I want to feel your time and I
Yeah.
want you to have the best experience. And so tell me what some of your landing experiences have been with your clients or the people that you've worked like their ahas or their awakening moments.
Yeah.
Can you recall?
Okay, well, I guess what I need to disclose is where this all started. I got sober in 1989 and I went into the program of AA, and I used to go to these meetings, and what I noticed is that the resolve to a problem wasn't necessarily about the problem itself or fix a quick fix to the situation. What I wanted is the principles that were going to go in back of or support the remedy to those situations for the rest of my life. And so I've always kind of looked for the fundamental architecture of how to create a good life. And as I read all of these different books, hundreds and hundreds of books, um, and participated in all of these different programs, I have pulled out the principles that connect us. And that's really what it's about. It's a connection. And if you want to really zoom out and look at the bigger picture, that we are all connected. And there is a unifying spirit amongst all of us. It's really quite the illusion that we're individuated in our own body and mind. I'm separate from you, because the truth is we're connected. And as we create conversation that does connect, we feel like this surge of love and energy and purpose, definitely purpose. And so I think that's what I was hearing out of what you were saying, is that as we connect, I mean, really connect, like I really feel heard. I really feel gotten, I really feel self-expressed, that it's divine.
Yes.
And there's a conversation there that is maybe not so readily apparent in our society, a society that's looking good, that's going after that next big thing, what can I buy, what do I need to get to feel more powerful or wealthy or accomplished, and all of these things that are illusions. And so, kind of getting off track, but do you
Not at
understand what I'm
all.
saying?
I
It's like a
do.
conversation that connects us.
Mhm.
And in my work in life by design leadership, it's all about thriving, that part that got you born, you're the winning sperm among 300 million other sperm that didn't make it, and here you are. And so that is who you are, someone that thrives, a being that thrives, you know uh, purpose, the ability to deliver something that's meaningful, that helps people grow and develop. That is really more than just something to think. It's it's something that makes our soul come alive. And love is the affinity that we have and share that maybe goes beyond the words that we use to describe it.
So the reason why I brought this to a point was because for those of you that are listening, it's really important when you're choosing a coach that they have the skills that Bennett is sharing. Because every time Bennett has coached me as my coach, I get that landing effect. I get that he's deeply listening. I get that drop in that there's nothing about me that's not important. Everything about me is being listened to and heard. And so you can, by the way, you can find him on LinkedIn. He has a fantastic profile. I think he's got a suit on and a tie or something. And
Bennet Marks MBA.
Yeah, Bennet Marks MBA. And I want to encourage you if you're looking for a coach, someone that you can see he has life experience and zest that's really important. And the reason why he coaches with me is because I know that he's a deep listener and he cares and he has this experience. Like his background is so juicy. If you really need to know, you can ask him yourself. We don't need to expose all of the good stuff, but the background is what brings wisdom to the playing field. And I know he and I spoke the other day, and he just shared with me that he got off a rocking weekend with Tony Robbins. And so I kind of like to dive into that for a few minutes, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah.
Tony's great.
Yeah,
I started with Tony's work in 1986, believe it or not, when he was doing his infomercials with Fran Tarkenton. And I caught him on TV one late night, and I know that he had two books, Unlimited Power and the other one called Awaken the Giant Within. I read both of them. And I can remember I was actually in the military at that time. And I would sit on my drill weekends and I would read and copy his note verbatim, because it was just so profound. Well, Tony took his work, or he says his teacher was Jim Rohn, who I met before he passed. But there was another couple of teachers from UC Santa Cruz, John Grinder and Bandler and Grinder. And it was a university professor and his graduate student, who developed the modality of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, which was the science of language. Tony studied neuro-linguistic programming and developed his own concept called NAC, neuro-associative conditioning. And so he used to say things that really crystallized the way that I understood why we act the way we do. For instance, we avoid pain and seek pleasure. Tony's the one that taught me that. And I'm like, oh, of course we avoid pain and seek pleasure. And we associate things with pain and we avoid those things. And we associate things with pleasure and we seek those things. And when you look at addiction is seeking out pleasurable things. It's like that addiction served a purpose. The problem is that we don't really see how we've associated incorrectly, and how what used to be an association that served a purpose stops being effective, stops being productive for us. And so a lot of our bad habits are chained together with associations that we don't cognitively understand. And so the coaching delinks those and then takes that association and corrects it out so that we can change our behavior. The other thing Tony taught me was it's in the moment of decision that our destiny is shaped. And that we think it takes this long period of time to decide to do something or I need to go through the paralysis of analysis and all of this long learning lesson. When you look at a real leader in the world, someone who's effective, they're making choices all the time. They're choosing, and they're not the victim of choices they made that were wrong. They say, "Oh, okay, that didn't work. Let me choose again."
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And so when you look at that concept that it is in the moment of decision, or if in our world we say choice, it's in the moment of choice that your destiny is shaped, then the better you can make choices, the better your destiny will unfold. And life is a series of choices. And the faster and more eloquently you can make those choices, I think the more gracefully you move through your life. Yeah.
I think
I mean, there's so many things that Tony taught. Those are a couple.
it reminds me of the Nike goddess, or the company Nike that said, just do it.
Yeah.
Like if a sports company could take a goddess and add just do it, who would that be? Could it be you? Could it be me? Could it be the person that just dives into the activity of movement? And with coaching, there's that stimulating idea that it's letting go of holding on to that narrative and moving into the choice of change and seeing what's in it for me.
Yeah.
What is that? The Whiffums. What's in it for me?
In the hero's journey, though, it's a natural, we assimilate our lessons, so it's very natural to resist. The first experience is, oh, I can't believe this happened to me. And, there's shock. It's the stages of grief, really, where you go through a stage of shock, and you can't define how long that's going to take. And then typically anger, and then complete defeat or depression sets in. And so we move through these stages, and then all of a sudden there's resolve. Like, I've had enough of this crap. I'm going to make a decision that moves me up and through the lesson.
Yes.
And brings me into clarity again, moving out of the forest into the clearing. And so I think a big part of the coaching is to help people to understand those stages that we go through and not make themselves wrong about it. And then realize, oh, it was my choice to really take on responsibility, to accept what's happened, to no longer resist, to let go of anger, and to make a choice about how I'm going to update my operating system.
Yeah.
How I'm going
And
Yeah.
then this beautiful window of manifestation occurs where, as Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, says, thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Well, it could be any kind of thought, right?
Yeah.
Any kind of thought. However, when we begin to work on our mindset, there's possibility for all this goodness to come in. For instance, at the beginning of the year, I began to think about creating a nonprofit. And then I had a conversation with a few people. You and I may have even spoke about it briefly. And then a friend came to visit, and he said he just created one. And now I've met somebody that has a nonprofit, and he said, I'll teach you everything about it. And I'm like, whoa, I was thinking this would happen sometime during the year. Well, during happens to be right now. And so as we remove all that stuff, I guess part of much of my life, I've just gotten to the point of, all right, just do me, show me, do me, show me, do me, like bring it on. If I am here in this vehicle that got the name June, and I'm here to make love visible, how can you show me how to do this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, let me ask you a question. You just said, as we remove all that stuff, now think back on the breakups you've had. Is it gone?
no.
Or does it exist as, wow, that happened, like an experience? This gets back to these pathways we create, these neural pathways, right? Once a thought or experience which is also a thought, your perception and your concept of how something happened is created. It's created. It's like it's there. It never goes away. And the more you think it, the stronger it becomes as a neural pathway. Think about smoking. The most ridiculous thing in the world that people think is that a smoker can quit smoking. Smokers smoke. Do you get that? Like, they smoke. That's what they do. That's the habit. And so when people come to me and they say, I want to quit smoking, can you help me? I don't try to take the smoker and make a non-smoker out of it. It's like something that doesn't make sense neurologically. It's a pathway that's created that has an outcome and an inevitable fix to it. But when you break it down, what you do is you create a fork in the road. You create a choice point. So I've got one choice that leads off into Smokerville, and one choice that leads off into non-Smokerville. And we build the muscle of non-smoker, a choice that previously wasn't there. Mm-hmm. And you install that neural pathway. Now, when you first install it, it's weak. It doesn't feel right. It feels unnatural. I'd rather, revert back to smoker, which I know very well, and I got that chemical fix. But as over time it develops, which it has for me, I quit smoking, in, I don't know, 95, which is, let's see, 10, 20, about 25 years ago, I quit smoking. And I don't smoke. I can be around people that are smoking. I don't crave cigarettes at all. But I used to smoke a pack of Marlboro every single day. But now I've got this new pathway that's really strong, and I don't need to service that old pathway anymore. Well, experience is the same way, and so you never really get rid of the experiences you've had. You just create a choice point and you walk down a new road. Does that make sense to you, Jen?
Yeah, I like that word, those words, choice point.
Yeah.
There's a choice point. There's like a course correction or an amendment or an addition to a new way of thinking. As you mentioned, Joseph Campbell, somebody that I came into play with after my father passed away, and some seminars work, some landmark work, some Ikipono work, and certainly becoming a licensed Unity teacher was the introduction to Abraham and Esther and Jerry Hicks.
Yeah.
I began to see who I be or who I am in a very different way. And the language of what I was telling myself began to change. And my life began to change.
How so? I mean, what do you mean?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I may have seemed like a sort of happy-go-lucky person and on the outside for the most part, but I began to become habitual about thoughts. For instance, this is a very simple one. And I remember the day I remembered. I was teaching a class at Unity of Dallas. It was a self-awareness class. And I said, I want you to remember all of your paperwork as you leave the classroom. And then I said, oh, I said it. And they said what? And I said, I want you to remember. I said, I remembered. And they said, what are you talking about, June? And I said, I didn't say, don't forget to take your paperwork when you leave the classroom.
Oh.
By saying forget, there's a perfect invitation for everybody to walk out the door and forget it. Don't forget.
Our subconscious doesn't know the difference between yes and no.
It doesn't. Don't forget this. Don't forget that. I'd like to remember. I want to remember. This will help me remember. So just these words that I can recall. Here's another simple story. And my girlfriend's Flip. I've named my car Front Row Joe. Front Row Joe. And
Yeah.
so we all get in the car to go down surfing. And they're like, come on, front row, Joe. They're all in the car. I'm like, look, there's a space. And they're like, she did it again. I've been traveling and friends will, they'll pull up in front of the parking
Cool.
lot and I'll say, what are you doing? And they said, well, you're in the car. We're going to get front row parking space. I said it to another friend of mine recently. Is like, wow. And I'm like, look, if there's anything I'm really good for, it's for parking in the front.
Yeah,
So
nice.
it can be that simple, Bennett.
And that distinction is neurolinguistic programming, that you realize that language itself is the building blocks of reality, of our reality. It's so random and arbitrary. And once you understand those distinctions, you have complete and utter control over how you use language, how you present something, how you describe something.
A choice point. And practicing that. In my kitchen on the way in, I have a big mirror and I use a Expo pen. And it has all kinds of stuff from Muji up there right now about awareness. Am I in the awareness of, am I noticing that I am aware? It's just statements like that, like, am I? Yeah. So definitely all about that program. Gosh, Bennett, we have been into this for quite some time, and you and I could go on for hours.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm just thinking there's got to be some drop pieces that you might like to share with the audience about your offering, and I don't know, just give us some final pieces from you that you feel would be powerful. Or if I've missed anything, please let's share.
Well, we relate to people from a heart space, June. It's like all of us have a path that we walk, and we must walk that path. And you could say a lot of things about the path that we walk, like, hey, we made a contract for it, before we were born. Some people believe that, some don't. But ultimately, you have what you face in life. And I like to give people the definition, the way I define success, so that they know really how I think. And success is the amount of grace and velocity with which you move through the space in front of you. And so
Repeat that one more time.
Success is the amount of grace and velocity with which you move through the space in front of you. So we're walking this path and there's this space in front of you. Now, if you want to be graceful about it, you learn, these metaphors that we've been talking about, how to turn your challenges in life into wisdom and teachings that, guide your life. And velocity happens as you do that, as you remove these barriers, the things that slow you down, things someone said that you didn't like, or something that happened that really set you off spinning or angered you in some way. That as we learn these distinctions in coaching, it helps you to not be affected so much at the effect of what happens around you. And as that happens, you're at cause over the matter of your own life. And that's really what we're talking about, is shifting from being a victim. And you might not use that word victim, but you might be plagued by all of these things that keep happening to you that are bad, or things that just keep coming up, time after time. And you notice, wow, these experiences are repeating themselves. I keep running into the same mate, or I've become kind of cynical because this happens out in the world and I've seen it many times to know that's the truth. And so, okay, great, that's your narrative. But is there something that you can graduate from wherever you are to something that's new and more empowering? And so that's what coaching does. It's not about being right, wrong, good, bad, positive, negative. It's not about saying that, I have the best coaching program on the planet. It's about saying that whatever you have, whatever's holding you back, wherever you want to go, great, bring it. because inside of the room, we will deconstruct it and build it into something that empowers you, that moves you forward. And, sometimes that happens in an instant. You have an aha moment, and all of a sudden your life changes completely. And sometimes it takes, several sessions. Sometimes it takes several months. I worked with a guy whose son died. And for a parent, to lose a child like that is devastating. And he felt like it was his fault, and he couldn't let go of it. And we worked together for like a year. It took like a year. And finally he came out of the woods and had an aha moment. And he realized that he didn't have to let go of his son. Like the healing to it wasn't about letting go so much as it was about the joy and empowerment that he got from having the son. And then he was able to move on. And so, those kind of little nuances sometimes hold us back in life. And if you've got something going on like that you want to work through, coaching can be a great medium. If you want to set up a future that's different than the one you think is going to happen, if you want to step out of probability into possibility, coaching is perfect. If you want to step out of the victim role into champion or leader, coaching's perfect. All of these distinctions are what make you unstoppable, bulletproof, just a leader of the matter of your own life, the best version of yourself. And so who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want to be connected to people, to be powerful in their matters of, what they do at work or in their relationships, or overcoming an addiction, not letting that stop you, but turning it into something that is a pearl of wisdom. And now it's an asset instead of a liability. So that's kind of how I think about it. If any of that resonated, great, give me a call. Look me up on LinkedIn. I'm at Bennet Marks MBA. I can give you my phone number if that's appropriate, June.
Yeah, say it, share it. Nice and
I
slow.
still have the 808-230-3844. 808's a Hawaii area code, 808-230-3844. And I'm happy to entertain any and all calls that come my way. I typically give an hour of free coaching, just to kind of see if it's a good fit and kind of see where we're going to pick up when we do enter a formal relationship. I've got a book called Perspectives. I've got another book called Launching Your Dreams, A Practical Guide to Starting a Business and Getting Funded. And I'm happy to share those with any of the listeners.
Thank you so much, Bennett. Yeah, for all of you that are listening, and if it's just you that's listening, you're not sitting with a mob or a big audience with us on the big screen, which that's sure to come because I'm visualizing it. Okay. I just want to say that, do reach out to Bennett. He is an amazing gentleman, coach, and he has a come from and a wisdom that is well worth your time and just look into. So
thank you, June. I appreciate that. I love you and I wish you the best. And
I feel the same for you. And thank you so much for spending time with me today. I think we've had close to an hour. Maybe we might.
Wow.
Yeah, we've just spent some really good and valuable time together. And for you that's watching, I hope that there was something that was supportive here for you, that you found something that landed, settled, excited you, and said, I like this guy. I need to give Bennett a call. And stick around because, my podcasts pop up every now and then. I thought maybe I could do this on a weekly basis, and then life just happens. And it's exciting. And so I just want to thank you for spending your time with Bennett and myself. And I wish you a glorious day. Thanks so much for being with me. Aloha.
Aloha.